Hi, Dean Myers here of VisWorld. I'm reporting from Washington, D.C. at Data Innovation Day, founded and hosted by the Center for Data Innovation. I spoke with Chris Whong, a Data Solutions Architect for Socrata, right before his lightning talk about data visualization. Chris is a self-described urbanist. He's a map maker and a data junkie with a specific interest in data visualization and civic technology projects. So first, here's his short conversation with me, followed by his lightning 5-minute talk and demonstration. And if you're into the quantified self movement, Chris's display of data points may be particularly interesting to you. Please take a look.
I work for a company called Socrata, and we help governments unlock their data, so we run an open data portal for them. But today I'm going to be talking about some of my visualization projects. So I am a civic hacker. I am a GIS, I have a GIS background, and in the last couple of years I've been able to kind of munge all of these skills together to make some really interesting products using mostly open data. So today I'm going to be going through showcasing some of those examples, which most of them are data animations, either made with Processing or D3. And showing kind of the value of them, what tools I use to make them, and kind of the whole process of taking a basic set of rows and columns that is nothing more than just numbers and text, and turning it into a useful, interesting, and visual product.
Terrific. What kind of platform do you work from?
Sorry,
what kind of software platforms do you work from? Are you platform agnostic? Do you like to work code directly, or?
I say. These days, I am very interested in getting out of my comfort zone a little bit, but most of what you're going to see is either made in programs like ArcScene, from the more traditional GIS perspective, processing, which is really great for doing standalone animations, but doesn't really live on the web and can't really do dynamic data. It's more of like make a finished product and it's done. And then what I'm getting into a lot these days is D3, so I can actually make visualizations that are easily transportable and can feed dynamic data depending on when you load them, make API calls to new data sets or new sources of information. So mostly JavaScript-based visualizations that live in the web.
That's going to be my next question. Yeah. How do you disperse or how do you disseminate the information, the visual information that you've created?
So I mean, I have my own personal blog, but I've also got a YouTube channel where a lot of the ones that are kind of condensed into video format will end up on there. But I'm always on the search for another juicy data set that if you can look at it and have some vision and think of what this could turn into if you apply some of these technology tools to visualize it. I'm always on the lookout for that. So that can kind of put me into a lot of different sectors, and a lot of times I'm mildly interested in the impact, but various people who work specifically in that sector will be much more interested. So it's always rewarding to take something that started as more of a fun project for me, just to see what I could do with a data set and have it turn into some sort of real world impact in whatever industry it's in, be it transportation or health or whatever it is.
Are there any collaborative storytelling type of things that you can talk about that might be a nice example of working from that raw data to a really vital and interesting visualization? That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I think so. A project I recently did for Socrata was for the United Nations Development Program, and we took their Human Development Index data and made it just a couple of simple comparative web graphs that let you slice it up a few different ways. You can break it down into high value high HDI countries and medium HDI countries, and really like click on a country to compare it to another country and see its progress in the human development sphere over time since 1980 to present. It's very interesting to kind of explore that map because you can't really see the country. You see the lines and you don't see the country until you hover over it. But it lets you really kind of explore this kind of virtual globe and really compare based on the signature of a human development index how these different countries compare to each other over time. It's fascinating. So that's one I would highlight that I'm going to show today. So that's on the Human Development Report website for the UN Development Program.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Chris Whong. I'm a data solutions architect for Socrata, and that's not only the coolest job title in the world, it's also the coolest job in the world. So what I get to do is help governments unlock their data. So I have a technical background, but I also have a degree in urban planning and a focus on civic technology. And I'm the guy who can come into a room and say that you don't have to have the technical resources of New York City to have a robust open data program. And as a consumer of data, you don't need to be a data scientist or somebody specialized in data to actually consume civic data. So my favorite data is data that is both, or all three of these things, open, civic, and geospatial. And if I have all three of these, I can usually turn it into something very interesting. So I start with GIS. I call it my gateway drug, but that was what got me into like kind of data munging. But I'm just going to go over a few different techniques and examples here. But what you're seeing is called the globe extrusion in a program called ArcScene, which is part of the ArcMap suite. But by adding a three-dimensional aspect using data, you can actually add a little bit more depth than you can just by color coding polygons. So that's one example. Processing is another tool that I've used extensively, and it allows you to do kind of animations using data. They don't really live on the web. They kind of live on your computer, but you can make these front to finish, from beginning to end animations using data. So to make this one, this is basically we collected 5 days worth of Twitter data using the Twitter API. And what we're essentially doing here is linking together people's tweets. So if you tweeted in one location and another location in the same day or in the same 5-day period, I can then interpolate your movement and animate it. So the idea here is just to kind of look at movement patterns and kind of see the flow of people moving around the city as they tweet. Bike share data is now accessible in DC, less accessible in New York, but we're working on that. But the DC bike share actually publishes all their trip data, which is great. So you've got a start and finish point for all these different trips. And again, in processing here, I take this data and I can kind of animate start to finish and also do some calculations on the fly to show how many bikes are being ridden. And you can see that like at 3 in the morning, the people who commented on this called it the ride of shame. But there are there are quite a few people using the bike share at 4 a.m. And you can really see the surges that happen during the day too, during rush hour and during the lunch breaks. So this is just one more way we can kind of make the data dance and see what's inside all these ones and zeros. Another thing we can do with transit data. The MTA in New York City actually releases, in a not very awesome format, their turnstile data. So we know how many people are coming and going from each turnstile set at each station in the New York City subway. And what I've done here is actually kind of animate that. So the green dots you see, oh, you don't see them very well. You're going to have to load this one on your own later. But animating kind of a movement of a dot into and out of a station and color coding it, and you really get to see the pulse of the city over time. And you can kind of speed these things up and really get to see an overall movement pattern. So moving away from that, I wanted to get into, instead of making these animations that are just a video, moving into kind of putting these things on the web so they're a little more dynamic and a little more explorable, I move into using D3 and a few other visualization libraries. And so this is an example of D3 plus Leaflet. And if we can get it to load. And my base map's coming in here. But this is this is data from the Philly bike share. Sorry, not Philly bike share. Philly bike theft data from the city of Philadelphia. But we've added it so we can actually kind of explore this map and watch the animation as it happens and zoom in on a neighborhood. So it's great that the city's putting this out, but this is another example of taking civic data that's in its raw form from the city and turning it into something that is useful to the average citizen. Aside from that, we've got this is a visualization I made of the New York City Open Data Portal. So this is actually data about data. What you're seeing here is the breakdown of data sets that are in Socrata's Open Data Portal in New York City and all the derived views off of them. So if you don't know in Socrata, you can take a data set, save a filtered view, save a chart or a map. And what's most interesting here is that 311 is the wildly most popular data set in New York City, that more people have made filtered views on it than anything else. But it's just a kind of another way to look at what is already becoming a very large set of data. 1,100 data sets can be hard to chop up, but if you can visualize it in the right way, you can make it a little bit easier to consume. And then last but not least, this is an example of a D3 chart that I built using the data from the United Nations Development Program. So we can chop up the HDI indicators and actually explore countries over time. I can click on countries and compare them to one another, and just basically chop up their massive data set of HDI data. So going through all of these, okay, so to do all these, you need kind of three things, in my opinion. You need the technical chops, you need the design eye, and you need some vision and storytelling. So I started out kind of somewhere up in the middle between the tech chops and the design eye, and I'm moving more towards, instead of just saying how can I make something cool out of this data, why am I making something cool out of this data? What question am I answering? So if you can combine those three and come up with a compelling visualization, you can put your data to work. So thank you for your time. That's all I've got. Thank you.